Hello again guys, back at it again with another phone review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the BLU Life 1X. This is a phone that I picked up late last year, and I was able to pick it up for just 99 bucks over on Amazon. Now I'm fairly certain it is not that price at the moment, but it's probably available for right at about $150, but I've looked at a grand total of about 4 BLU phones at this point, and I have to say, I think this one's actually my favorite. So let's start off talking about the design just a little bit. It's very minimalistic, but also stylish in my opinion. It's very plasticky, I'm gonna go ahead and say that, but the back has this sort of a leatherette feel to it, even though it is still plastic. It is a removable back, but it's not a removable battery. And underneath that back, you do have 2 SIM card slots and a micro SD card slot. You probably can't tell it from the camera, but there's a little bit of a light curvature, a little bit of a lip to the glass. It's actually kind of nice. It sort of falls off to the edge. Not quite like the Samsung Galaxy S7 edge, but it's a nice little curvature. It makes it not so sharp. It's very nice in the hand. And of course, just quickly walking around the device, on the front you have a 5.2-inch 1080p display, 5-megapixel front-facing camera with flash, volume rocker and power button on this side, nothing on the other side, micro USB port on the bottom, rear-facing speaker, 13-megapixel camera with flash on the back, and the 3.5mm headphone jack on top. And while there were a few things in there that I'm not a huge fan of, the grand majority of it, just feeling it in the hand and using it day in and day out, I've been a big fan of the way that it feels in the hand. In terms of the performance, like I've said before, this has the 1.3 GHz MediaTek octa-core processor, same one as the other 2 BLU phones that I've looked at recently, which garners it a very respectable almost 40,000 on Antutu, which is obviously nowhere near the top of the pack, but it's still pretty decent for a $100 phone. In terms of the actual performance while using it, it is very similar to the BLU Vivo 5 that I looked at previously, except instead of having 3 gigs of RAM, it has 2, and for the grand majority of usage, I haven't had problems as a result of that. As you may be able to tell, I've got turbo dismount pulled up here, and some of the graphics here are kind of stuttering, just like we saw on the Vivo 5, but again, it's really not bad. It's playable. We'll just take a quick spin around it and show. There you go. And we're going. We're not going particularly well, but we're going. And away we go! Smash! And you know, that didn't stutter too badly. It didn't do too poorly at all. I did pretty poorly, but that's okay. I also did a benchmark of the internal memory. You can see right there the most recent test was 184 megabytes a second read and 42.5 megabytes a second write, which is actually just a little bit faster than the BLU Vivo 5 that I looked at. And I will go ahead and address the one issue that I had with the Vivo 5. The Timely app on this works perfectly every time. I've tested it quite a few times now and have had no issues with it. So there must have just been some sort of a weird issue with the software on top of the Vivo 5, which actually, let me go ahead and step in that direction. As you may be able to tell here, this looks just like stock AOSP Android. It looks like the Google Now launcher. It's not, but it looks like it. It's not, I say, because I can't swipe over and see Google Now. But you've got a very plain Jane app drawer. You have a pretty stock feeling look and feel to the rest of the UI. And I mean, if you go into the actual settings menu, this looks like stock Android 5.1. Because it pretty much is. There's not a whole lot on top of this. And I love that. Like I said, I've tested 4 BLU devices at this point. This has been my favorite because of the feel in the hand and because of the software. Look at that. Moving on to the sound. It has a rear-facing speaker, normally a big downer in my opinion, but the rear-facing speaker on this one, I think BLU has just figured something out. In a budget device, they're able to put in really loud speakers, so I've been really impressed with how well this one's done. A lot of times when they're on the bottom of the device, I'm able to easily cover them up with my hand, but with the positioning of this one, and the fact it has a little teeny bit of a bump there, if you can see that. If it's laying down, it's not going to completely block it out, but also if I've got my hand cupped around the back while playing a game, I'm not going to be able to cover it very easily. My hand is just going to kind of go around it, amplifying the sound and directing it back toward me. I'm kind of a fan of that. Again, I like having the front-facing speakers, I prefer that, but when they're nice, loud speakers that can easily redirect in my direction, I don't mind too much. In addition to speaking of sound, I did test this out with the Rode VideoMic Me, and it did not work with it. I can't say that I'm surprised. The majority of Android devices I've tested do not work with it, but I thought I would mention that as well. As far as the display, you can probably see here in my home studio and everything, it gets decently bright. Not really a problem indoors. I mean, it's actually a little too bright for the way I've got the camera set up. So for indoor usage, I've been keeping it around 50% and having a pretty decent time with it. I did take it outdoors and try it, and it was a little bit difficult to see. It was not impossible. When I turned it all the way up, it was okay. It was not a problem. I've seen much, much worse. As for the camera, much the same as the Vivo 5. It's not the best. It's not amazing. It does 1080p video on the rear-facing camera, but it's not quite 30 frames a second the whole time. It tends to jump down to 25 or 24, or even as low as maybe 20 or 15 frames per second, so it gets pretty choppy there. And of course, anything that I show you in this video is gonna be really choppy because this is a 1080p 60 video, so anything out of this is gonna look really bad. Sorry about that. The front-facing camera, It's also 1080p, which is amazing. But again, the video is still kind of choppy. It's got a pretty decent bit rate, but the frame rate, like I said before, tends to drop. And in low lighting, just like the Vivo 5, it's just sort of bad all around. Slow shutter speed, gets grainy really easily. Not the worst thing that I've ever seen, but it's not an amazing camera. I say this as a person who just bought the Galaxy S7, so I'm completely spoiled beyond all recognition right now. But a couple of cool things about it. It does have a front-facing flash, as you can see right here. So if we move it around to the front-facing camera, turn it on, you can actually just turn it on as a torch and use it, or you can turn it to on and use it as your camera. And there you go. We just took a picture of the camera that I'm using to film this using the front-facing flash on the device. Very nice. Now, the one thing I can't speak terribly authoritatively about is the battery life. I have not used this as a daily driver for a very long period of time, just for this weekend basically, because I've been going back and forth with so many devices, and I've actually got a friend coming over who wants to purchase this off of me, so I have to finish this video up. Now, that said, I did use this off and on all weekend, and I have not had to charge it. It has a 2900 milliamp hour battery, so it's about 250 milliamps smaller than the Vivo 5, but it also has a smaller display, but it's a 1080p display, so it's kind of back and forth. So it should be fairly similar to the battery life on the Vivo 5, which I had absolutely no issue making it through an entire day with. I've been using this pretty heavily since we've been home for the last few hours, and I've only dropped 6% with it. So I've played games, I've been using the camera, I've been using the interfaces and everything. No problem so far. So realistically speaking, to go ahead and wrap this up, if you are looking for a budget phone, especially if you can find this one for $100, absolutely snag one up. In a way, I'm a little bit bummed that I'm probably not going to have this any longer, simply because this is such a very nicely put together device, has a great feel in the hand, stock software that is supposed to be updated to Marshmallow sometime, decently performant, even though again it's not the top of the heap, with a halfway decent camera, especially when you're outdoors in good lighting. And that is going to wrap it up for me for today. You can find a link to where you can pick this up down in the video description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to leave a thumbs up down below if you like this, subscribe to receive all my videos when they become available, and we'll see you again next time.